I guess we can just start then. And then, just like welcome.
Welcome to the Dialect Media Podcast. This is episode 2. Today we're going to be discussing whether the death penalty is necessary or not. Welcome here with my co-host Randy. So let's just get straight to it.
Okay.
So recently it's been kind of controversial if the death penalty should be necessary or not. In my opinion, I think the death penalty is necessary, and the reason for that is if it really gets a fear factor for people and they know that certain things are not allowed and that will cost them their life. So for that, I think it's necessary to prevent these crimes to happen. What is your take on it?
Well, thank you for asking. My take on it is that I think there are a couple of reasons why I disagree for being for the death penalty. The first one is it's really just an easy way out for the criminal. The second one is I just don't think there is any reason to take another life, basically. There's like different levels of crime and either morally or ethically correct, but overall is just I think everyone deserves at least a chance at rehabilitation, and even if they don't get rehabilitated, I think the death penalty still doesn't give enough of justice done for the victims to warrant anything, to warrant still existing.
I see what you're trying to get at, but the way I'm looking at it is set the example. Being there's certain things that are just purely evil and shouldn't be done, and for those reasons you should not be able to live. For example, let's go to extreme. If there's a serial killer killing kids or something, they should get the death penalty, because if other people ever think about, I want to do the same thing as the serial killer or whatever it may be, they'll realize it will come with my own life. And the question is, a lot of people value their life, and the death penalty is like, okay, that's like, if I do this, it's my life for their life, basically, essentially. And I think if we keep reinforcing the death penalty and actually having more death penalties, then there will be less crimes of that sort, because they know that it will cost them their life in exchange for someone else's. And I get back to, the saying, like an eye for an eye. We see back years ago, if you were to do something, the justice will be getting back done to you. And I do think that did help somewhat of the crimes to stop happening. And for that reason, I do think the death penalty is a great thing, actually. And also, I'm saying in the sense of, we know for a fact this person is guilty, and we know for a fact what they did is like inhumane. So that's why I think the death penalty is a great thing.
To touch on your eye for an eye point, I think the reason we moved away from that is just breeds a more violent society that we've been accustomed to. We don't really need to do stuff like that, because we already know that, we hope that the current justice system will do us justice, the victims, and punish the criminal accordingly. The death penalty itself, I think, to touch back on my own old point, where it doesn't really give justice. It just takes the life of someone, even though they may have, killed many, and, it's a mass murder. In order for them to actually feel that sense of justice done, they need to be able to live with that in their lives. Try to think for themselves on how or why they did this was wrong. And then for if someone can't do that, then I think the image of dying doesn't bother them necessarily as a person, right? The kind of person that would commit these acts, if they're not able to be rehabilitated, they just will not be intimidated by the death penalty either way. They will still keep committing these crimes because most of the time, you see it with some psychopaths and stuff like that, where they go off to commit crimes for to get their ideas out into the world. They view their own thoughts and ideas as something beyond death, and they would risk dying just to get those across, even not just dying themselves, but killing other people as well. So I think in order for them to actually live with that failure of what they've done as a person, they need to stay alive. And I think staying in prison for their entire life in of itself is already taking someone's life away. You take their freedom, their liberty, their sense of self, and the safety that they thought they once had.
Yes, you take their freedom away if they go to prison, but by giving them the death penalty, like I said again, it's like how they want their ideas to be influenced. Then law force ideas will be also influencing other people. Like, for example, I think public execution should be brought back with the death penalty, because in that sense people can see how really scary it is. A lot of people don't really understand how serious the death penalty is until it's actually time to go through with it. And a lot of times we see people that they like act like they don't care about the death penalty, but when it's their day to go, they don't want to go. And if we would have more of that public knowledge for these potential future criminals to see, then that might prevent them maybe double think of, I should not do this, because just how they want their ideas to be out in the world, we can have that same opposite factor for the death penalty ideas and the seriousness of it.
I think the consequence of having public executions and the death penalty in general, it doesn't put the fear into the criminal that would commit those kind of acts. It puts the fear into the regular people, the citizens. It's saying, okay, at what point who decides which laws are worth public execution? Who decides that whether I live or die in front of my own family? If it's the government, well, we've seen governments go against the people. We've seen the times during the Dark Ages, where the force that's in power, it puts people not in trial, but it just executes them, and then the people live themselves in fear. And I think it's just a bad way bad thing to normalize in a society. It doesn't give the citizens a sense of freedom. It makes them feel attacked, and like when you're trying to put fear in other people, you're putting fear in everyone. If with a public execution, and the ones that aren't afraid of dying, those are the ones that are going to commit the acts that you would deem public executable.
I will go back to the cartels in Mexico, and the reason for that is the cartels in Mexico, they know how weak the government and the law system is. So because of that, they continue to commit crimes. But there's certain cartel groups that are instructed by their leaders do not kill any USA federal agent. And why? Because the US federal agents are strong, their laws are strong, and they know there will be consequences. So this is like a perfect example of being enforcing the law strongly, that it puts fear into the criminal from committing those acts. So that's the same concept I'm trying to bring into the death penalty. Like, look at them. They're criminals saying we're not going to touch federal USA agents because of the fear factor. And that's why I'm saying public execution with the death penalty is good, because of that fear factor that will go into the criminals. There might be some citizens, I don't disagree with that might be scared as well. But at the end of the day, it's trying to fight evil. And sometimes you need to be, in my opinion, really as strong. Just like the El Salvador's president, he was strong. He put all the gang members in prison, and not only that, but he made it public. He made videos of how, if you're a gang member, this is how you will live. This is how you will be treated. So for that sense, I think public execution is better than with the death penalty than just the death penalty itself.
I mean, they're the cartel members. They would be, I guess, afraid of the federal agents because the federal agents acted, like you said, and they have consequences. I think just consequence enough of going to prison for life is enough to drive the fear into those cartel members. I think it's the same with anyone else that is, like, if you are intimidated to go by going, if you are intimidated by the consequence of going to prison for life, that is in of itself at the top with losing your entire life. Killing someone with a public execution, it doesn't properly punish the criminal. It announces their death to the world. It announces that this is what they did, and then this is how they died. If this is if what they did gets announced to the world, the criminal himself would be he would win by dying, because his ideas got out into the world, and we as a society we publicized it, we got it out there, and we'll just have more and more people willing to risk their life to get their own ideas out there, and it may damage the world. Maybe there's some where they'll do well. I don't think there are, but just like in the most extreme cases. And I think you mentioned something about.
Well, I will put it this way: you say we should just put them for prison for the rest of their life, right? Let's just say, for an example, in the Texas, there's maybe 50,000 criminals. All of them did murder of some sort, mass murder, brutal murder. They just for the story, let's just assume these 50,000 prisoners, they did murder in a brutal, bad way. Children, women, whatever the case may be, right? Pure evil. Let's say most of these criminals are about 30 years old. You want them for prison for the rest of their life. So what? Let's just say another 50 years. That's us taxpayers giving money to these criminals who probably should not be alive for what they did. We're still going to feed them and waste money on them when we could just simply give them what they deserve. And you might bring up the point, how do we know what they deserve? Well, I would say the victims didn't deserve that either, and they still got what they did. So for that reason, I think we should just give the death penalty. Why waste this unnecessary money on people that clearly do not deserve it?
I mean, the justice system we have now for the U.S. it was built with the idea that anyone who is innocent won't be punished, or anyone can clear their name. Having the death penalty in of itself, it goes against that idea, because once you take that person's life, there's no way of clearing their name and living the life that they should have. There's been many instances where the wrongly has been incarcerated and the wrongly has gotten the death penalty. It has consequences to regular, ordinary people, and there are flaws in our justice system that take time and many years to fix, essentially. If we start killing people who are wrongly incarcerated, whether we know it or not, it just gives terror to the regular citizens. It's not living with liberty and freedom. It's living with fear of your own government. Fear with you can be taken off the street and wrongly accused for something, for murder, for whatever it is, and you would be put to death simply as that. And that's it. That's your entire life. And there's no so keeping the death penalty it goes against the justice system that we have.
Well, let's say, for argument's sake, let's say these people are guilty. We know that for a fact, right? And let's say we're gonna keep them alive like you want, right? We're gonna put all this money into here, or I'll give you another choice. We could give them the death penalty, and the money that would have went to them could go somewhere else, homeless, family. What do you think is the right thing to do at that point? Are you still gonna keep them alive? We know for a fact in this scenario they're guilty.
We can say they're guilty. We know for a fact they're guilty, but I mean, for argument's sake, I guess I'll I'll entertain that thought. I would put money into both. We can keep our prison systems open, our rehabilitation systems open, and provide. I mean, right now we're not even doing both. The prisons themselves are being run like they're all run down. They're falling apart. We have homeless everywhere in all of the major cities. It's none. Our citizens aren't being taken care of anyways. But I think if we use the government to fund for social programs, and not for other useless stuff.
Yeah, I mean, right now is not a good spot. Obviously, like you said, homelessness, crime racing up. But like I said, we need to start somewhere. And in my head, at least, something like a public execution. I know it's harsh, and I know people would really disagree with that. And the death penalty, I think, just kind of gives an example, a hard hit of reality. Recently, we've been seeing a lot of mass shootings. We've been seeing stabbings, crazy things going on. And to be honest with you, I don't know what the answer looks like to fix those things. I just think that stricter, harsher punishments might be able to solve the problem. I don't know. That's why I think something like the death penalty could see how all these crimes being connected, they do have serious consequences. They do have problems, and it could cost you your life.
I mean, I think it's more complicated than just having public executions. Like as you said, the mass shooters, the people killing and stabbing and all that stuff, shootings. That's I think for me that's more like a systemic issue where we have, because most of the people that do those things are young. They're most like around our age or even younger, and that's mostly a thing that we as a country have let them down, and their victims even more so. It's providing the death penalty to those kinds of people. It only forces their hand to increase the level of crime that they commit. Right now, it's mass shootings, and if we start to try to be forced on those consequences, I think maybe there'll be a point where it'll escalate into mass bombings. It'll just keep going higher and higher until they feel like their voices are being actually heard. So their thoughts aren't just in their head. That we have to give more help to them than actually punish them. We have to help them before they commit the crime, before they actually commit the crime, and then start putting them to death. I think as a government, we should. Well, I say we, but I'm not the government. But the government should give help and aid in mental facilities and rehabilitation facilities, and increase the funds, increase the aid for those things. I mean, there'll be outliers, psychopaths, sociopaths, and all that stuff. But overall, most of the people that commit crimes are just regular people who have no other means to survive. And if we start trying to eliminate that feeling of uncertainty, that fear that they have, that need for survival, then we will eliminate most crime. The level of crime where you say that the death penalty should be applicable, anyone that commits those crimes is not going to be affected by the death penalty. Like, to touch back basically on what I've said previously. it only damages our current citizens if we don't do anything to help them. If we start helping our citizens instead of trying to terrorize them, to make them fear their actions, fear the consequences of their actions, and start telling them the actions that you should be committing are other actions, that you aren't alone, and that if you start doing good things will come to you. That's mostly of the why I'm against like the death penalty, mostly in favor of providing resources and more funding towards these kinds of programs.
I would say something you pointed out is the people that commit the mass shootings, they're fairly young, right? At a very young age, we think we're invincible, and that's not the case. A lot of times of the mass shooting, we only see what happens with the mass shootings. We don't see what happens really, or at least it doesn't get highlighted as much. What happens to the people that do these things? If this was publicized of the consequence, it is death penalty, then I think that would get other young people to see I'm not untouchable like I think I am. If I do something like this, it will be really gruesome what happens to me next, and it will be painful. And I think, like, for example, like if a troubled kid, right? Let's just say a toddler, 3 years old, he's at home, he's rowdy, he doesn't listen. You put him in a classroom and he sees all these other kids sitting down, writing when they're supposed to, listening to the teacher when they're supposed to. He starts doing that same thing slowly, and that's because he's starting to see what is expected in the classroom, and then he also sees what happens when you don't follow the rules. And I think that's what we should do, is highlight what happens when we don't follow the rules. This is what's expected of you. If you don't follow the rules, this will happen. These are the consequences. That needs to be highlighted for the kids. Just like how toddlers, once they see what's the consequences for certain things, they just either stop doing it or they might continue doing it. But now that they know what is the cost of their actions, what will happen if they do that.
I mean, the school is there to teach them. So once they start getting into school, the teacher's there who's a professional, who was trained to teach kids, to help them learn, right? The kid doesn't pick up on what their other kids are doing, right? If you hand a kid a piece of paper and tell them, all right, solve 10 times 10, and they've never done a multiplication problem before, they're going to get frustrated with themselves. They're going to think they're stupid, right? It's the teacher that like helps them learn how much they're actually valued, that they can improve themselves, and that they shouldn't feel frustrated with themselves, which is mostly what causes the mass shootings, right? And to touch on the other point, I feel like there's been a couple mass shootings where the shooter has already they would have died on the scene of the crime. So I think the death penalty isn't really much of a scare to these kinds of kids, or it's just not helping out the mass United States citizens. I think if we provide the death penalty, I don't think it would solve the problems that you're listing, as opposed to the ones that I've listed, I guess, technically.
I would say when Pablo Escobar was killed, there was pictures of him and his corpse with the federal agents or whoever. And for a while there was peace, but what if that would have happened to other people that started doing the same things as him? Would they have continued, and would there been peace longer, or the peace would have remained because they still did it? I think that's why I bring that example, because, like I said, there was peace for a little bit of time, and I think there would have been more peace if they kept continuing setting this example of, look, this is what happens to criminals like this.
I think the problems I have with the death penalty also stem from problems I have with the justice system, where it's not fair to most of the citizens. Anyone can be incarcerated, and if the DA, or I know Suits is like a fictional TV show, and I know that like that's not real, but it does happen to a point where the DA would plant evidence, or anyone can plant evidence, and you could be trialed and prosecuted for something you didn't commit. I think overall, just for that, from that own reason, I think that's more than enough reason for me to be against the death penalty, because I think there's like a verse in the Bible where it goes, I'm not sure which king it is. I think it's like King David, where he goes, where God tells him, "I'm going to flood this city," and then King David tries to plead with him and says, "For 100 people that are good people, would you flood the city?" And God goes, "For the sake of those 100 people, I won't flood the city." And then the king keeps lowering and lowering the number till he gets to one person, and then God keeps saying, "For that one person, I won't flood the city." Right? I think if we can have full confidence, 100% confidence in our justice system, where every person that gets prosecuted is guilty for sure, I think then we could start having the conversation of whether the death penalty is morally correct or not. But there's been multiple cases where the innocent gets the death penalty and they didn't really deserve it. Their life got taken away, right? And that's mostly the reason why.
You bring the Bible, I will point to Exodus, where actually we do see God kill, innocent kids. Actually, he kills the kids of, what was it, the Pharaoh and everyone else that had to do with the Pharaoh. And kids are innocent, right? Kids don't have a conscience yet. So even God himself has killed the innocent, and he killed it so that the people could be free, the Jews could be free. So even in that sense, I would say that even God has killed the innocent.
God, I think you bring up with the one with Moses and the all
the plagues, yes,
the plagues, and
plagues,
yeah.
yes.
But I think that story, it's mostly he's not really established the fact that he's real. I think he uses those events to broadcast to the Pharaoh, to people of Egypt, that he is existent. I think right now, I don't think we should be playing God, especially because we aren't God. I think whether we live on the mercy of his or not, it shouldn't determine whether we kill someone or not, simply because God killed someone.
It's not that we're trying to play God. It's just that God killed these innocent people, like you're saying, so he can establish and made it know he's there. So he sacrificed innocent for him to exist, essentially, right? And if we could sacrifice criminals for essentially peace to exist as well, it's not really playing God. It's kind of following a footprint that he did.
I think we can talk about like trying the death penalty leading to peace, but I think the death penalty, or public executions, to take it further, it wouldn't provide peace. I think it would further agitate the people. I think trying to intimidate people in this country specifically, it will lead to more and more instances of violence. Like I said, where violence just breeds violence. It wouldn't really give peace. You could live in fear, but ultimately, this country was built on liberty, on freedom, the pursuit of happiness. And if comes an instance where someone that was publicly executed is innocent, I think that will bring upon an even more radical and more extreme violence than what you intend to do, what the public execution.
Okay, so I actually did get a lot of understanding the way you think, and there is some things that I feel like I need to consider making the point, making the points you did, and I just think the truth always lies somewhere in the middle. If you're watching this, I hope that you were able to observe the way we think and make your own opinion based on what we were saying. None of us here are perfect. This is just basically our opinions and how we feel. I know I learned some things, and there's some things I got to think of that Randy brought up that I will think of. So we'll leave it to you guys. Let us know in the comments what are your thoughts, what are your opinions, what you think about the podcast, and if there's things you agree with or disagree with, and just tell us why. And we'll see you in the next one.
And like and
Any fun?
subscribe.
Any fun? Very nice.
Yeah,
Was that good, or you want to do the outro?
we can do that. That's fine.
Okay.